community effort, open source. Neal Kaplan is continuing the trend, originally from LA, but assimilated by San Francisco. So here he is.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello! Now I'm here. I want to talk about two great teams that work really well together, documentation and customer support, and how we can make them work together to create awesome documentation. I'm Neal Kaplan. I work for a company called Interana. We do behavioral analytics, large-scale event data. I am the entire documentation team. There is me. Yeah! I've been a tech writer for a little over 20 years. 2 of those years, fairly recently, I ran a support team. I want to talk about how did I get here? Why am I here talking to you now? How I started on this path? What's in it for you? What happens if you don't do this? And how can we, how do we get each other, support and docs, to work together? I heard this quote in a podcast recently, and I like this because it's true. We can all go to work, clock in, clock out, spend 8 hours doing whatever. There's always enough to do. There's always something. The real question, though, is what are the real priorities? What really matters? What makes you effective? What makes the documentation effective? What makes you valuable? To be more succinct, or this, life's too short to do mediocre work and build not good things. So I want to start with a story. Once upon a time, when software came in boxes. This is not my software, but they were just down the road. And our boxes looked really similar. The documentation team was in sunny Menlo Park, California. We worked with the engineering team and product managers, and I think finance was probably in that building there, actually. But support, customer support, was not in Menlo Park. They were very far away. They were in Dublin. We did not know them. We never talked to them. We had really no clue. We just knew that they existed. And in our manuals, because of course we wrote manuals, there was a line that at the beginning that said, hey, if you've got any questions or comments or suggestions, send them to whatever the heck email address it was. And I was a new tech writer, and I said, what happens if anyone actually does that? And one of the senior tech writers said, oh, yeah, go ask Tom. I think he does that. So I went to talk to Tom, and he said, oh, yeah, they put it in a file, and I've got to go find it on the server somewhere. Yeah. So that meant, of course, they were hard to find because they were found when Tom thought about it, or some young twit reminded Tom, hey, maybe we should go take a look. Which also meant they were forgotten. They were out of sight, out of mind. We didn't know they were there. So we could pretend that everything was fine. We didn't hear anything. There were no problems. It was great. Documentation was perfect. The end, done. So which means, of course, this was not true. We weren't providing excellent service. We just didn't know what the problems were. And that is an extreme example. I think things are generally better now. But the reality is that documentation and customer support are often kept separate. We often don't communicate. Problems go unanswered or probably not even seen. So we're not providing the great service to our customers. So why should you care? What does this matter? Documentation is self-service customer support. The documentation needs to answer the real customer questions. We want the customers to be able to, they have a question, they have a problem, we want them to find the answers. We want them to go to the documentation, get that solved. Oh, brilliant, awesome, you guys are great. This is often thought of as ticket deflection. And ticket deflection is often named as a goal for documentation. I'm not quite comfortable with that. I prefer ticket direction, because we don't want our customers to shut up and go away. We don't want to say, RTFM, good night, done with you. Because we want that feedback. We want to hear what they're asking. We want to know what problems they're having. And yeah, we want the documentation to answer it, but we don't want that to be the end of the conversation. And when you answer that question, when you solve their problems, you have happy customers. Happy customers renew. Happy customers buy more of your product. Happy customers say nice things about your product. And we want customers saying nice things about our products. So let me tell you another story. I went to a meetup a few years ago at a very large company. It was not a Write the Docs meetup. It's okay. And there were two presenters. One person from customer support, followed later by someone from documentation. And the customer support person came up and said, "We have a knowledge base, and it has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of topics." Okay, fair enough. Documentation person said, "We have a help site, and it has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of topics." And I sat there, and then at the end I raised my hand and I said, "Okay, are you using the same tools? Are you sharing content?" No, different tools, different processes. So I said, "Why? Why are you doing this? You've got all this information. Like, you're saying there's hundreds of topics in one place, hundreds in the other. Why aren't you sharing? What's going on?" And they very slowly and very patiently talked to me and said, "That's because the documentation is prescriptive. It says how the product should be used. Customer support is descriptive. It says how the product is really used." Yeah, you see the problem here, right? Why? Why would you do this? Why do the extra work? Why do that to your customer? Where does the customer go? You're the customer. Where do you go? You want a question answered. You don't know. Don't put this work on the customer. Don't make them do this. Don't make the customer have to decide or have to read the docs and go, "Well, that doesn't answer my question. I'll go look over." No, they're not going to do that. Really, no one's going to do that. So yeah, don't put the burden on your customer. So what happens when the teams don't work together? Like that story. You get redundant effort. I know, this is brilliant. You have redundant effort. You have one team writing content, another team writing content. It might be very similar, but maybe they're different tools, maybe they don't talk. So you have more work of lower quality, at least lower quality than it should be, lower quality than it could be. This is actually a shirt from my company. We believe data is greater than opinion. And if you don't know what your customers are asking about, if you don't know how they're using the product, you are writing your docs based on your opinion, based on your instincts. And your instincts might be great, but I'm standing up here to tell you that after 20 years as a tech writer, I don't trust my instincts. I trust the information, I trust the data. Obviously, you have frustrated customers. Why doesn't the documentation answer my questions? What am I paying for? Why am I using your stupid product if you're not telling me how to use it? I hate you. I'm not buying anymore. Frustrated customer support. Because customer support is using your documentation to figure out how the product works, to answer questions. And if the documentation isn't answering the questions, that means they have to go find it on their own, write their own, and they're building their own knowledge base within there, so they're duplicating effort. What do I do? It's all wrong. First of all, meet your support team. This is my support team. They are awesome. Look, they're smiling. They are really awesome. It's not only meet them and know their names. I mean, I know them. There's John and Danny and Max and Patrick and Alexis and Mina, and they're freaking great. Actually, Alexis is the director of customer support, and she is my most expert of subject matter experts. But what you want to do is build a relationship. You want them to know who you are. You want to know who they are. Do they specialize in certain areas? This team is fairly small, so they're generalists. At a previous company that I worked at, I knew that Fernando was the API guy. If you had an API question, he knew it backwards and forwards. Melanie knew payment processes, payment information, integrations. So you know that, and you know who to go to. Who are your subject matter experts? And you want to work with their manager, in this case Alexis, to make knowledge capture and sharing part of the support team's goals. Make sure that they're measured on that, and that's a goal for them. Review support tickets. Now, if you're at a company and you're getting 5,000 support tickets a day, this might be less feasible. But for those of us at smaller companies, it is. And you can ignore the one that says, I've had there's a product bug. Not your problem, you don't have to worry about that one. But what you really want to look at are questions that start, how do I do this? Or, I want to do this. Or even better, I've looked at the documentation, but... And I had one of those recently, where a customer was looking at our documentation on how we build funnels. And it started, I've read the documentation, but I still don't understand it. It's painful, but it's also really good. Because then he put out this whole use case. Oh, that's awesome. And that's what you want to see. Set up automated processes. So most, probably all support ticketing systems will have like a component. If it's a doc issue, they can tag it as docs. Make sure that goes to you. Or you or the entire doc team, depending if those are two different entities. But really, have those things flagged. Another thing that I did in support was that I would create tags. So something was tagged as documentation. And that also went to me, but still. You want it to be that your tech writers are getting that information and have anything that's assigned to documentation, again, sent to the doc team so that you have a record of this, that you're listed, or maybe you're responsible for fixing this. As part of this, review the difficult cases, which tend to be the most interesting. This isn't a whiteboard. This was actually the funnels question. Max and I went into a room, and he just whiteboarded the hell out of this thing and showed me exactly what the use case was. And not only that, but I learned that doing a diagram really made this much easier for me to understand, which meant it was much easier for the customer to understand. So I was able to take this and build my own diagrams and really just show the content, show the concepts that way. And that was incredibly helpful. Learn about your customers. These are some of our customers. Learn what their levels of expertise are. How skilled are they? Where are they in the process? Are they beginners? Are they advanced? Also look at the support tickets and talk to support to figure out what vocabulary are your customers using. How do they talk about your product? Is it the same way that you talk about your product? And it might not be. And then if it doesn't match your terminology, maybe you need to change and you need to meet them. Review ticket metrics. What you want to look at is the number of documentation or the kind of how do I usage questions that are coming in, and start getting a baseline. How many of those type of tickets does your support team see? And again, support systems are going to be able to run reports. They'll be able to run reports on types. Work with them to get this information. Basically show them, tell them you would really want to use this information. It will help the docs. That's what you need. Join forces. If support has a knowledge base, mine it. Use everything you can. Grab everything. Don't be shy. Grab every damn thing you can. Even better yet, and I know this is difficult, build one source of truth. Don't make your customers go to multiple places. I know it's hard. Maybe support could be announcements, whatnot, but what you really want to do is make it clear to your customers where they need to go to get answers. Don't send them into multiple places. But work with your support team. Have them write. They talk to customers every day. This is one of our support staff wrote this up, and this was a customer use case. They wanted to know something, how to do something. Our team figured out a really cool way of doing it. They wrote it up. And you can see part of the example here. But there was very little that I had to do, a little bit of editing, and this was ready to go on the documentation site. Don't underestimate them. They communicate with customers every day. They talk to the customers. Also, when possible, give them credit. If you can show who authored it, that's great. But at the very least, let them know that you've used the information. Show them where it is, show them how it is used, tell them how valuable it is. And when you show them that you are using the information, it makes people more willing to help you and give you more. Do not give your support team a 200-page style guide and say, read this before you ever write a word. Trust me, they won't do it. Ask me how I know. Make it as short as possible. Build templates. This is an incredibly simple one. It's very much like one I have used. I try to do it by memory. But what you want to do, first of all, overcome their fear of the blank page. We all know what it's like to stare at a blank page and see that blinking cursor, and all of the ideas drain out of your head. Gone. Don't make your support team go through this. Build a template. You're showing them organization. That helps them organize their thoughts. Put in comments that just give them some general guidelines. What am I looking for here? What do I want to see? This, again, it helps organize their thoughts. It ensures consistency. And also means that your customers see a familiar organization and that you don't have as much work to do to make this a customer-facing piece of documentation. It just makes things easier for yourself, make this easier for support. Now that you've done this, it's time to close the loop. Bring them in. Make them valued partners. Have them review your documentation. This is, as you can see, this is Alexis commenting, and there's a lot of red there. She is very smart. She is very thorough. So yeah, there's a whole lot of red marks on here, but it makes the documentation so much better. They know the product. They know the customers. They know better than I do. I'm listening to them. Now, keep reviewing the ticket metrics. And one thing that you want to be looking at, look for change. You want to see the number and type of documentation or question metrics and see how that changes over time. In my experience, I have seen that there's not necessarily fewer documentation issues, but the type changes. So there's fewer really simple issues, and then more complex issues. Now hopefully the documentation and the user interface are dealing with the simple stuff like, I forgot my password, what do I do, help me. What you want to see is the customers be able to look at the documentation and say, okay, I've solved these problems, now I've got more complex use cases. Okay, that's great. And again, that leads to more information we can mine, but that shows you what effect the docs are having. Knock down silos. Silos don't do anyone any good. I mean, I think we know that. Your customers don't care about your company's structure, nor should they. And you, as documentarians, you don't want to have to go and break into every little silo and pick out every little nugget of information. I'm probably mixing metaphors there. But whole point is, you don't want to be trying to get into everyone's heads and break it. You want information coming to you. And again, share knowledge. Build a culture of information sharing. Start with support. Again, you don't want to play detective every day. We don't have time for that. We've got many other things to do. We want information flowing to us. We want support, and trust me, this is brilliant. You want support coming to you and saying, hey, I've got this really interesting use case a customer asked, and I found this solution. Or even, do we have any docs about, and you could say, no. They say, okay, let's talk about that. And that's what you want to see. Now, this is sort of bad news. The more we do this, the better you can prioritize your tasks and deliver docs that really help your customers. Use the input from support to set the documentation priorities and build that documentation roadmap. Now, this will change your priorities. This will make more work for you. In my role, I report to product, the VP of product. I am in the product team. And my boss said to me, "You are a product owner. Your product is documentation. You are the product manager for documentation." Woo! So that's exactly it. You're a product owner. Documentation is your product. Make it awesome. And this comes into another issue. I was speaking to a friend of mine, Phil, and I've known him since college. He's been a tech writer for as long as I have. And last week he said, "Oh, you're talking about docs and support. Oh, that's really cool. Because I've just been working with my support team on this issue," which, I mean, as you can read, very complicated, very opaque, and very, very important. And he said the support folks have had to deal with this and have had to deal with confused and enraged customers. We don't want confused and enraged customers. And then it gets really good. We chopped 50 pages of vagueness down to 13. 50 pages of vague theory, confusing tables down to 13 pages, and this is really his words, laser-focused practical instruction that the customers actually use. And you think about that. Do you want to deliver 50 pages to a customer of things that they have to sort through and try to figure out? Or 13 pages of really awesome documentation? 13 pages. You know, even 13 pages, that's a bit, but I'd much rather read 13 pages that make sense and tell me what to do. And he said it's one of the most rewarding, exciting content-focused work that I've done in his entire career. And that's where we want to be. We want to be doing stuff that matters. Because when we do this, you know, going back, it's about figuring out what are the priorities, what really helps customers, and, you know, shorter, more concise docs really helps customers. Trust me, and we all appreciate that. And the whole goal is that by prioritizing, by delivering this focused, practical information, we aren't merely moving the needle, we're freaking burying the damn thing. Thank you.